Okay. It's good people stay as far away from me as possible while I'm giving class because, whatever I have, I don't want to give to anyone else. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabalaba Girivardhare Gopi Janabalaba Girivardhare Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachade Yamuna Tira Banachade Jayaran Madhava Gundabihade Jayaran Madhava Gundabihade Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhare Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhare Yasodanandana Brajajada Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachade Yamuna Tira Vanachade Jayarana Madhova Kunjabi Hati Jayarana Madhova Kunjabi Hati Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya also Tera Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chalanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Gajai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sayamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturanam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasadevi Ki Jai Sabhaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Jai Jatarne. So today we are reading from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 54, text 14. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tatapi aham na shochame na prarishyame karhichit kalena daiva yuktena janan vidravatang jagat tatapyaham na shochami na prarishyami karichit kalena daiva yuktena janan vidravitam jagat tatapyaham na shochami na prarishyami karichit kalena daiva yuktena janan vidravatang jagat tatapyaham na shochami na parishyami karichit kalena daiva yuktena janan vidravatang jagat yaham na shochami na parishyami karichit kalena daiva yuktena janan vidravatang jagat Jananvidravitam Jagat. Okay. Tata Tata api, nonetheless. Aham, I. Nashochami, do not lament. Na prakrishami, do not rejoice. Karichit, ever. Kalena, by time. Daiva, with fate. Yuktena, conjoined. Janan, knowing. Vidravitam, driven. Jagat, the world. Translation, but still, I never lament or rejoice, because I know this world is driven by time and fate. So you can repeat. But still, I never lament or rejoice, because I know this world is driven by time and fate. So purport by the followers of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Having stated that the Supreme Lord controls this world, Jarasandha explains the specific method of control. It should be remembered that in the Vedic context, kala or time does not refer merely to a system of measuring planetary movements such as days, weeks, months, and years, but rather to the way things are being moved. Everything is moving according to its destiny, and this destiny is also described as time, since everyone's destiny is revealed and imposed by the movements of time. So, I'm going to read Jiva Goswami's commentary. He gives the conclusion, I never lament in defeat, I never rejoice in victory. Karichit should be understood with both statements. I know the world is agitated by time. Since time is equal everywhere, there should be no appearance of happiness or sorrow. Time is linked with karma, which gives various results to various people. Previously, he said it was the will of the Lord. Now he says it is time endowed with karma, because the karma of the jiva has no beginning at all and has no end. A particular aspect of time composed of the Lord's action produces the particulars of karma. So again, the verse. Tatapyaham nashochami naparishami karichit kalena daiva yuktena janan vidravitam jagat. So omagana timiranda sha gananjana shalakaya chakshur unmiritam yena tasmai shigarve namaha. So before we start talking about the philosophy, let's talk about psychology. Really, in essence, Jarasandha is not really consoling Shishupal. He's talking about himself. He's bragging. And if one wants to console someone, as we learn in our teachings of empathy, it has to be about the other person, not about yourself. And not only that, it has to be true. So two things. Jarasandha is actually lying. He does lament. He does hanker. He does feel joyfulness when he achieves things. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a demon. As we know, he's Viprachiti. Viprachiti is a demon that was fighting with Vishnu, previously described in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Viprachiti was killed by the Supreme Personality of God. And so, obviously, he's lamenting and hankering, and obviously he's just bragging about himself. And obviously, he also knows Vedic philosophy. So this is important to keep in mind. Now, as far as the subject matter is concerned of time and karma, both subject matters are brought up here. These are actually the two of the 5 major topics in the Bhagavad Gita? Does anyone remember the other three? Besides Krishna Prabhu, yeah. Supreme Lord Ishvara, karma. Well, time and karma, we got the two already. The Supreme Lord, we got three. Prakriti, and Jiva. These 5 topics. So, time, of course, we're going to read some verses from the Bhagavad Gita in a second, and we're going to read some verses about karma in the Bhagavad Gita. But Ishvara, of course, is described as Krishna, Parameshwara, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakaranam. And the Jiva is described at length, specifically in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna describes the eternality of the Jiva. And generally, whenever we're going to a funeral, we recite the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And the interesting thing about the Bhagavad Gita is that Prakriti has more verses, or the material energy has more verses describing it than any other verses, than the other verses in the Bhagavad Gita. The majority of verses are actually about Prakriti. Prakriti, meaning the material energy in general, meaning the modes of nature, how the modes act, how they act on people. So there's a mixture of how the modes act on people and the Jiva. So these are the 5 topics in Bhagavad Gita, very important topics, and I'm going to read some verses from the Bhagavad Gita that talk about time and karma, not about the other 3 subject matters. So in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, text 30, actually all these verses are in the 10th chapter. Among the Daicha demons, I am the devoted Prahlad. Among subduers, I am time. Among beasts, I am the lion. Among birds, I am Garuda. So these are the opulences of the Absolute. The Vibhuti Yogam is the name of that chapter. And text 32, well, actually, it doesn't mention that. So text 33 mentions that of the letters, I am the letter A, and among compound words, I am the dual compound. I am also inexhaustible time. And of creators, I am Brahma. So those are the verses about time. Also in the in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we find when Arjuna, and I don't have this verse written down right now, but when Arjuna asks Krishna, "Who are you?" he sees the universal form, and Krishna answers, "Kalo Asmi, time I am." And he describes how this time factor is meant to destroy everybody, and particularly the other soldiers in the battle, etc. Now, as far as karma is concerned, verses in the Bhagavad Gita are, there's a lot of verses about karma, and I'm going to read from the 4th chapter, text 17 to 19. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. So the word karma doesn't only mean reactions to activities, but it also means the activity itself. The word karma means action. So the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. And in this particular verse, action in this particular case means sukarma. Sukarma means activities which give you a good result. What forbidden action is vikarma, and which actions which give you a bad result. And inaction would be transcendental activities which don't give you any result at all. In the next verse, Krishna states, one who sees inaction, this is a verse that bewilders people sometimes. One who sees inaction and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. Now, it's very confusing. It appears to be a very confusing verse, but what this verse is actually saying is that when you're acting for Krishna, When you're acting transcendentally, there's no reaction to that. And when you're acting, trying to not act at all, you can't not act. There's always a reaction, because even you're breathing, and even if you're just breathing and not moving at all, there's some action going on. So that's your inaction, action, and inaction. And Krishna says one who understands this is very intelligent, or intelligent amongst men. In the 19th chapter, Krishna describes one who is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor, and the word karma is used there too, is devoid of desire for sense gratification, in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of sense gratification. He is said to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So this is an important point, which we're going to speak about in a second, that for those who are actually engaged in Krishna consciousness, the karma gets burnt up. And I'm going to quote a verse from the Brahma Samhita to justify that in a second. So 420 is, abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. And in text 30 of the same chapter, all these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifice, they advance towards the supreme atmosphere. So in other words, when one engages in Krishna consciousness, it cleanses or gets rid of the results of all your past activities, and that way you can actually advance towards the eternal atmosphere. So it's not that karma is absolute for a devotee. It's not that what Jarasandha is saying here, that everything is under the influence of karma and time, but for a devotee, it's completely different. I'm going to quote some verses from the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that actually show this in a second. But right now, the 8.3, in this particular context, the Supreme Personality of God has said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and its eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies, here's another definition of the word karma, is called karma, or fruit of activities. And then finally, in the 9th chapter, 927, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever you start as you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. That's devotional service. In this way, 28 is connected with this. You will be freed from the bondage to work, freed from karma, and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me and this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. So, in this particular respect, I am going to quote a verse. Wait a second. From the Brahma Samhita, which also proves this point, that if one engages in devotional service, one is not under time or karma anymore. And this verse is from text 54 in the Brahma Samhita. Yastvindra gopam atavendram maho swakarma bandhanurupa palabhu bhajanamatanoti karmani nirdahati hindu jabakti bhajam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. And I'm going to read Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's translation and his commentary on this verse, because this actually goes along with the point that I was making. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns to their roots all fruit of activities of those who are imbued with devotion, and impartially ordains for each the due enjoyment of the fruits of one's activities of all those who walk on the path of work. In other words, those who are Krishna conscious, Krishna burns up to their roots. The roots means the kuta and the bija. You understand? Because sometimes we talk about the different activities of karma. Kuta, bija, isn't it? Aparabda, parabda, the cycle. Does everybody remember that? Kuta means the inclination, bija means the seed. And Prabhupada often talks about how even if you engage in austerities, the seed of devotional service, not seed of devotional service, but the seed of sinful activities, the seed of karmic activities remains. So the whole point is to burn up that seed. And Prabhupada would give the example of how sometimes the archaeologists or anthropologists, they would find seeds from different tombs, especially Egyptian pyramids or tombs, that were thousands of years old, and then they just add water to those seeds, and the seeds would actually sprout. So, in other words, those seeds may remain even if one is apparently not executing or apparently doesn't have a desire for sinful activities, but the seed, kuta, and the bija remain. So here, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his purport, in his comment, not his commentary, his translation says, burns up to their roots all fruitive activities of those who are imbued with devotion. And this is also a point to impartially ordains for each the due course of the fruits of one's activities. In other words, for those who are not Krishna conscious, then it's Krishna's energy. And you find in the previous verse, Jarasandha was actually saying, basically, it was the Lord. But we know the Lord himself doesn't intercede in this material energy unless we're talking about the case of the devotees. For those who are non-devotees, there is the mechanistic laws of karma, and people are forced to act. Ahikaschitchana pijatutishtati karmakrit karyate yavasa karma sarva prakriti jargana. So people are forced to act in a certain way. People are forced to endure certain reactions according to their karma and according to their gunasangasha. Karnam gunasangasha sadasat jamna jamishu. So here, in the same, it's interesting, in the same sentence, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is dealing with the devotees and the non-devotees. It's interesting. Impartially ordains for each the due enjoyment of the fruits of one's activities. And he adds here, of all those who walk on the path of work in accordance with the chain of their previously performed work, in other words, their previous activities, no less in the case, this is really a beautiful statement here, no less in the case of the tiny insect that bears the name of Indragopa than in that of Indra, the king of the Devas. So in other words, if someone is not Krishna conscious, then it doesn't matter what your position is. It's all karma. It's all modes of nature. And actually, Krishna says this in the Gita. One sees that only the modes of nature are active and nothing else in this material world. But for a devotee, it's not like that. Devotee is directly under Krishna. So the purport is actually quite beautiful in this regard. And I was actually listening to a class this morning with Prabhupada, talking about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that Prabhupada, when he asked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for initiation, the first thing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said is that I will initiate him. He likes to hear. And then Prabhupada commented that even in the beginning, he could not understand much of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's elevated language. But still he listened with faith. And because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was basically known as a living encyclopedia, he learned the vocabulary in the English language by memorizing the dictionary. So I remember the first time I read the Brahma Samhita, I actually had to have a dictionary right next to me. That was before the time of Google. just to try to understand his words. Now basically I'm aware. So here's his purport. God impartially induces the fallen souls to act in the way that is consistent on the deeds of their previous births. Induces. Wow. So, that they're forced to act. This is an interesting discussion. Where's the free will? If we're all forced to act, and you have this verse which I just recited from the Bhagavad Gita, and hika shit chitama bijata tishnati karma kardite yavasak sarva prakriti jargunai, that everyone is forced to act helplessly. Where is the free will? Well, actually we've had many discussions on this. The free will is you can surrender to Krishna or not surrender to Krishna. That's your choice. Now, of course, you can approach the Vedic literatures, which is somehow or other you're getting some association with Krishna, and you can make your choices according to the modes of nature. But once you get on the roller coaster, the modes of nature, you've chosen the modes of nature, then you're actually forced to act helplessly. So that's why when we're dealing with people who are not Krishna conscious or not religious people, we should be very compassionate, because they're actually being forced by their impulses to act in a certain way. And of course, they're responsible because they've also chosen that ability they have. They've chosen which modes of nature to associate with. You understand? But even if they've chosen a particular mode of nature to associate with, that position is not stable, because the modes of nature, according to Krishna and the Gita, are always struggling for supremacy. Sometimes the mode of ignorance becomes prominent, sometimes the mode of goodness, defeating the other two modes. So it's no real stable position. And also, even if someone exhibits so-called good qualities in this world, and they're not religious or not God-conscious, I'm being non-denominational here deliberately, if they're not God-conscious or religious in the sense of devoted to a personal God, then according to the Bhagavatam, Harava Bhakta Shakato Mahadguna, Mano Retain Asati Davato Bihi, those qualities are simply exhibited by the modes of nature. They're not their qualities. You understand? So if someone is kind, okay, they're kind, but that kindness is coming from the modes of nature. If someone is not a transcendentalist, someone is not a religious person. So anyway, so let's continue. This is such a great purport. He induces the fallen souls to act in the way that is consequent on the deeds and comes from the deeds of their previous births, and to enjoy the fruition of their labors. But out of his great mercy to his devotees, he purges out, now listen to this, by the fire of ordeal. In other words, devotional service means to go through different trials and tribulations. Practically every great devotee went through trials and tribulations. That means our faith is challenged. We have physical challenges. We have emotional challenges. We have society challenges, adhyatmic, adhibodic, adhidaivik. So it's the fire of ordeal. He purges out by the fire of ordeal. This is such a beautiful expression. The root of all karma. What's the root of all karma? Viz means nescience. Nescience means ignorance, science, and evil desires. So Krishna purges that out by the fire of devotional service, the trials and tribulations, the struggle we go through. He purges out the root of karma, the seed of karma. Karma, though without beginning, is still perishable. The karma of those who work with the hope of enjoying the fruits of their labors becomes everlasting and endless and is never destroyed. Therefore, we say nityabhata. Nityabhata means eternally conditioned. The function of sannyas is also a sort of karma befitting an ashram and is not pleasant to Krishna when it aims at liberation. That is a desire for emancipation. I guess it's a fancy form of retirement. What's pleasing to Krishna, yat karosi yadashnashi yajahoshi dadasya. That's real sannyas. Yat tapasya shikotya tat kurushva mararpanam. Whatever you offer, whatever you give away should be done as an offering to Krishna. And this is reference to some people who take sannyas just to get liberated. They also receive fruition of their karma. That means the results of their karma. Even if it be disinterested, their karma ends in atma mamata. That means self-pleasure. But those who are pure devotees always serve Krishna by gratifying his senses, forsaking all attempts at karma and gyan, and being free from all desires save that of serving Krishna. Krishna has fully destroyed the karma, its desires, and nescience of those devotees. It is a great wonder that Krishna, being impartial, is fully partial to his devotees. Again, that verse in Bhagavad Gita, samaham sarvabhutesha name dvesho stinapriya. That I am equal to everyone, but one who renders service to me is a friend, and I'm a friend to him. So I'd just like to end with some verses of the Bhagavad Gita that prove this. I'm not going to read all the verses. This is from the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and I want to leave time open for questions, where we find a description, beginning with the 23rd verse of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not going to help for me to read all these verses, but anyway, there's a description of the best times to pass away from this material world. If you pass away during the influence of the fiery god and the light, when the sun travels to the north, then you go to the supreme Brahman, and you pass away during the other times, the smoke, the night, the fortnight of the waning moon, or 6 months. This is all karma stuff. When the sun passes to the south, then you go to the moon planet, but then you come back. And so one gets very worried when they read these particular verses. It says, when one passes in light, he does not come back. When one passes in darkness, he returns. But finally, 827 proves the point that I was making, that although the devotees know these two paths to Arjuna, they are never bewildered. Therefore, be always fixed in devotion. So for a devotee, it doesn't really matter. You can pass away during the dark moon night, the light moon night, the moon going to the north, the sun going to the south, the sun going to the north. So we should have that faith. Shraddha Shabde Vishah Shakahe Sujrita Nishya. Simply by serving Krishna, then all this is taken care of. But we have to be ready, again, referring to the fiery ordeal that's mentioned by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to endure different austerities. And of course, the main austerity is being fixed in our chanting of the holy name of the Lord, fixed in our following the orders of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, fixed in following the regulated principles, of course, and dedicated to helping others come to Krishna consciousness. Be fixed in these austerities, regardless of the trials and tribulations, and then we're assured of going back to home, back to Godhead, regardless of our past situation or past karma, regardless of our previous parabdha karma, which is dissipated, of course, even by namabhas chanting. So, any questions or comments about any of these points? So those are the topics. Time and karma, yeah. Nihikasit shadamapi Does anyone remember the number of that verse? It's in the Bhagavad Gita. Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatatitat. Nahi kaschit. Just like the word used in the, actually in this verse that we just read today. I don't remember the numbers very well. So this karhi chit is also used in this verse too, that we just read today. Nahi kaschit shanamapi jata tishati karma. Karite yavasa karma sabra prakriti jarguna. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born in the modes of material nature. No one can refrain from action, even for a moment. If someone has the database, they can look up that verse right away. So, $3.25. 3.5? 3.5. Yeah, Bhagavad Gita 3.5. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the modes of material nature. No one can refrain from action even for a moment. That's the translation written there, right? So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's some extent they can choose the modes of nature, their association, because that's also described by Krishna Bhagavad Gita, that karnam gunasangasya sadasad janma jonishu, that one associates with certain modes of nature. Like Prabhupada will often talk, like if you associate with drunkards, you're going to become a drunkard. And certainly those who study the Vedic literatures have a greater understanding of the modes of nature and a greater ability to understand which choices they're making. But there is some. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, to associate. But if he keeps associating with those who drink, he'll continue to drink because the modes actually force one. It's an interesting discussion, the whole concept of free will. Free will and and destiny. So who else has a question? Yeah. Actually, the point you chant Namabas, actually, this is according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Harinam Chintamani. The Namabas actually gets rid of even Parabdha karma. Although there's a token reaction. In other words, Krishna, sometimes Prabhupada would describe when one takes up Krishna consciousness like pulling the plug out of the fan, pulling the plug from the wall of a fan, and the fan has some momentum. So it keeps spinning. So oftentimes devotees talk about token reaction. But that token reaction is administered, once one takes up Krishna consciousness, that token reaction is administered by Krishna rather than the mechanistic law of karma. So, there's a differentiation here between those who are not spiritual, and I'm being non-denominational here. I don't want to just say that we're the only truth, the way, the truth, and the light. Nobody goes to the Father but through us. But if those who are not following the order of God or worshiping God or accepting Him as a person, they're strictly under the mechanistic law of karma. And those who even one time say, Krishna, from this day forward, I'm yours, then Krishna administers token reactions to that particular individual. Well, if you say, Krishna, I'm yours, that's Namabas. isn't it? Krishna, I'm yours. You chanted. And actually, you see that when Gadadhar Das went to the Qazi and he said, I want you to chant Hare Krishna. And the Qazi said, tomorrow I'll chant Hare Krishna. And Gadadhar Das said, you become most pure, isn't it? You've already chanted Hare Krishna. So, there's benefit to chanting the holy name of the Lord, Namabas. Namabas, of course, means accidental chanting, meaning something else, joking, even making fun of the devotees. That's Namabas. Okay, on that happy note, these are beautiful translations and purports by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Devotees should read the Brahma Samhita.
Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine. Vedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Auravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashchacha Desatarine Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gora Bhaktarinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gora Bhaktarinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gora Bhaktarinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gora Bhaktarinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gora Bhaktarinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gora Bhaktarinda Jaya Gora Bhaktarinda Jaya Gora Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hare Bol, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Nitai Gaur, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol. Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radha Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radha Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. Thank you. Pratipanam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapitani Amita Smarane Nakala Etadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Dordaiva Midrishami Hajjani Nanuraga Trinada Pisu Nichena Tarora Pisu Hishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Najanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamae Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Hoita Ki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayata Vabada Pankaja Stita Duli Sadrashim Vachintaya Nayanam Galadashu Daraya Varanam Gad Gadarudaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada. Hare Krishna. Thank you for addressing the deity so nicely. Tamini Shena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahiname Ashlishava Padamritam Panastumam